to Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, October 23rd, 2018. We are coming live from the Soul Sage Studios here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope everyone is having an amazing night so far. So the first thing I want to announce is the launch of my new company. I know I don't usually do plugs or anything like that, but, you know, I got to do some plugs for my own stuff sometimes. So, we're starting I'm starting a new company called Serenity Naturals with a Z, and we are going to be selling the highest quality CBD oils, gummies, all sorts of CBD products, salves, and all sorts of stuff coming in soon. And we're also going to be selling the highest quality kratom as well. We have about 15 different types right now, and I'm excited for this venture. We're going to eventually get kava in, and we're going to be soon adding natural products that I make homemade, such as toothpaste, deodorant, shampoos, and so much more. I'm so excited for this new venture. I wasn't really much into sales and doing stuff like that, but it just feels right. And sometimes you just got to go with what feels right. So if you can go on our Facebook page and find Serenity Naturals with a Z at the end, not an S, and like us and subscribe. Pretty soon we're going to be getting our website up, and we'll give you all that information later. But yeah, how are you guys doing? I was reading your emails throughout the week and everything, and I'm so excited that you're excited for us to be back, because we're excited to be back. Can you hear it in my voice? Of course you can, because I'm excited. And it was like 3 months, 4 months and stuff, and as we talked about from the last show, there was a lot going on in my life, and I want to make an announcement that the lawsuit that we have with the PBSO is finally over. A 4-year battle finally over. The stress is relieved. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to have everything over with, and you just don't know how much and how exciting that is. So, if you guys want to chat with us, you can always go on Spreaker.com, and then under, I think it's Spreaker.com/user/Transcendental Transformation, all one word. And then you can chat us up on there, because they have live chatting. I haven't figured out yet still how to do live calling, so I'm hoping to do that next week, because next week we're going to have an amazing guest coming in, and her name is Lourdes Starshower, and she is all about tantric, and she's going to teach us how to heal our bodies and challenges in life and stuff with sexual energy, because it is so raw, so powerful, and that's just the way it's going to be, right? So aren't you excited? Yeah, I'm excited too. We were supposed to have her on this week, but I got to take full blame for that. For some reason, I messed up the dates, and it just wasn't there. So next week, we're going to have her on. She was kind enough to understand that I goofed, and so yeah. So if you want to chat with us, hit us up on Spreaker, and chat with us. You can also wait for our archive, because we're YouTubing right now at youtube.com/Transcendental Transformation. We're also doing live on Periscope right here on the camera. Hopefully we got the camera set up right. It's hard at the angle we're doing, but Transcendental 13. And as always, we're doing live on Facebook at Transcendental Transformation, or my personal Facebook page. So, all right, guys. So tonight, I want to get into tonight's show, because we got a lot of stuff to cover, and you know what, we're going to do something a little bit different. Usually it's me talking, and nobody always wants to hear just me talking. I don't even want to hear my own self talking all the time, but tonight I have a guest coming on and stuff like that, and we're going to get into that in a second. But tonight I really want to focus on building relationships with self and others, because there's so many of us that struggle, and I watch this all the time. I watch my friends go through this. I watch on social media, and just even in passing, meeting people. I watch so many people struggle with trying to find out who they are, or why things are happening in their lives, or why, they're chasing around all these people that just are no good for them, or just, they're just not mixing right. And we do, right? How many of us, and I've been guilty of this myself, how many of us have chased the relationships, whether it be friends or family or romantic relationships, that people that just don't seem to care about us as much as we care about them. I mean, we put in a lot of hard work, we put in a lot of effort for people just to never really get their acceptance. And that's tough. It really is. And, I know I've struggled with that. Hey, we've all had that one romantic relationship that just seemed to hang us, right? That just, we couldn't get over it, completely destroyed us. And, we've all had those family members or friends that, we put in all this effort and it just doesn't, and they seem to like everybody else but you, and they call you your friend, but they don't invite you out. They don't do all this other stuff. Yeah, the list goes on. Why? Because I hear it all the time. I listen to your guys' emails. I listen to what you say to me, and I watch how you guys interact and what your struggles are. And I figured tonight would be a great show to help those working on, trying to find a relationship with self. Because, as it is, it sounds so cliche. Yes, you got to love yourself. Okay, we know that. Okay, you got to find, you got to be happy with yourself. Yes, we know that. But it doesn't always work that simple, does it? And that's the tough part about it, because it's really, really tough for us. We'll read all these self-help books. We'll take all these, classes and all these workshops to try to help us find ourselves and everything. But it never really clicks, does it? Because we may feel good for a week, maybe a month, maybe even 2 months, but then we fall back into our routines, right? And there's a reason for that. And that's because, a lot of these classes, a lot of these books that are just repeating the same information over and over that they learned. And this information is built with limitations. And so anything with limitations will only take you to a certain point. It'll only take you to as far as that limitation knows. And that's why we struggle. It's kind of like, if we go and work out and we don't really know much about the gym, and our friend comes with us and they don't know much about the gym, but we try, we're only going to go as far as what we know, right? And that's the same thing with trying to figure out ourselves. We spend I see so many of us struggle with finding ourselves I even have a good friend that just broke up with somebody, and this person is devastated because of this very situation. They put on all this effort into this person, and it just and they didn't get it back, and it was just so hard. And I've seen it with guys, I've seen it with girls, I've seen it on both ends. And we always chase what we can't have, right? And that's what's always funny about it. We always chase what we can't have. And I think that sometimes we have to really, I'm a big advocate of us sitting down and taking a break. After my last relationship, I took a 7-year break, and I just, and it never really bothered me to be like, okay, well, let me try to find somebody else, because because when we work on ourselves and we truly try to get to an understanding of ourselves, then what ends up happening is we realize that we don't need all these people, that we're chasing what we can't have. We're chasing the golden scepter or something that's in mythology that we just, where is it at? Is it out there? Is it really the ark? And it is out there. But if we're carrying our baggage, if we're carrying our problems, if we're carrying our challenges and our anger and our emotion and our jadedness, our insecurities with any relationship, whether it's with friends, or family or anything, what does that do to us? It makes it crumble, right? It's almost like it builds this false reality, because anything built on sticks is going to fall if the frame is too heavy. And that's the idea that we got to start with today. And we have become a society embedded in what we have, right? Because we're all on our phones. And let me tell you something, as someone in business, hey, you have to realize that technology is okay to use. It's just that when we become consumed in it to the point of trying to find happiness through it, or trying to find external gratification, that's when we start to sour. And we really have to learn to do that, because, hey, in business, I have to be on YouTube, I have to be on Facebook, I have to be on Instagram, and all sorts of different things, Chat Hat, and all these different things. And what sucks about it is that, it's very time consuming. And honestly, yeah, I kind of like it at times, but a lot of times it kicks back a lot of what you people would say negativity, and I just look at it as drama. I say, okay, well, there's a lot of people looking for themselves, and we value ourselves by what we know, or who's on the right side, who's on the wrong side. Yeah, and I know I'm using my no words, but this is for a point. And we fight over politics and all the time. I mean, I see nothing but hate pointed at each other over our current president. And it's sad that we spend so much time in righteousness instead of trying to find ourselves. And I know that everybody's not going to get to the same point, the same finish line all at once. And hey, that would be great if sunshine and rainbows happened and the unicorn pranced around and, it did its thing. But that's not reality. And so we have to start making, our relationship with ourselves a priority. And the reason why, and today I have my protege Caleb with me, and the reason why I wanted to bring him on, and he's going to be a regular guest on the show because, for the past couple years, he has been working with me, and I want to, kind of give you an inside scoop of what it's like to actually go through the process, because a lot of us don't know what the process is. I mean, hey, we could read 1,000 self-help books or take 1,000,000 classes and they tell you, oh, you just do, chanting or just do affirmations or just do whatever and it's going to fix everything. But it doesn't. It takes deep, hard work. And that's the reason why I brought him on. So Caleb, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Miss Raina. I'm super excited for tonight.
Well, I'm glad to have you too. One of the things that I wanted to make sure, I had this idea, and the reason why I wanted to bring you on is just for the reasons that I said here at the on the radio show, was that you have been working with me for almost over 2 years now, and I have watched you go through so much struggles in trying to find yourself, and I think it'd be really good for the listeners to really understand what it starts to take in order to go down that path to find yourself.
Absolutely. I would say the hardest thing for me, and I still deal with it on a daily basis, is the aspect of responsibility. And you told me that since day one, and I think I think in the beginning that didn't really happen, but it's the responsibility that literally everything that happens in your life is a direct outcome of yourself and what is going on on the inside of you. And we want to blame other people so much, and other situations.
I agree with that 100%, because responsibility is something that a lot of us don't like to take. It's, and I know you struggled with that too, because the first time I told you, well, it's you gotta say, yes, I'm responsible for this. It's our ego that wants to step in and be like, no, it's not me. They did this to me.
Absolutely. You just want to blame everybody else, or this happened, or this is what happened to me. And at the end of the day, I mean, we're responsible for how we choose to react.
Absolutely. And I think that our reaction when we're learning, because a lot of the first steps, so let's start with the first steps for everybody, because I don't want to jump into just where we're at now. When you first started to work with me and on yourself, and we started talking about responsibility, let's just take responsibility for now. And then when we started taking responsibility and the idea of it, what were you thinking responsibility meant?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Being young and I was so conditioned and so used to always going to other people, what's going on, what's happening, tell me your opinion, how about your opinion. I even sometimes still catch myself doing that. And as far as what I wanted to look at responsibility was, I wanted to look for different ways of how other people got through it, and I thought that maybe if I followed their ways, it was going to somehow help me.
So
that answered the question.
Well, it does, because we are conditioned from an early age to do as we're told. We're in school, we're taught not just responsible, their form of responsibility, but we're taught obedience. We're taught, do as I say, and this is why it is, and not to question anything. And I think that that's what affects us in our life is the whole just accepting what others have said to us without any thought, and that causes us the most chaos.
Exactly. It's like I said, we're so used to just accepting. I mean, if you can take it down to the educational level, going through school, like you said, we're taught over and over again that we need to memorize this, or we need to do this or that, or follow these rules, and we're not once asked to question anything. And even going into adulthood, we're not asked to question anything. So it's like, why would we?
And that's the scary part, because we don't question anything. And I know a lot of people, even you, even your mom got mad at me before when I said, well, you believe what you believe because you're told that. You don't actually believe it. It's just that you're told something so many times that your brain naturally accepts it as the truth. And that's the reason why we go into so much chaos, and why we lose ourselves, and why we're chasing these ideas of trying to get the right relationship or the right friendships, or build a relationship with our parents or our siblings or anything. Because even I've had struggles with my parents. I've had struggles with my sister, and we're trying to fight this internal instinct of who we really are and what everybody else has told us. And a lot of times that will confuse us and cause that stagnation in us when we're really trying to figure out what's going on.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's exactly, I totally agree with that.
Well, it's tough, but people don't realize, like, when you first came to me, you were very emotional, and one of the things that I told, and still that we struggle with, is the idea of getting out of our head. And a lot of people think that, we have to think, everything's up here in the head, and everything we do, we have to think about, we have to try to understand, and if we can make, A plus B equals C, then I understand this information.
I honestly, I think I still deal with that all the time, but I think we get so addicted to it that if we do this certain thing, then it's going to deal with the problem. Same thing, if we can think our way through whatever's going on, then we're going to get through that. And if we can think about whatever's going on, then somehow we're going to find ourselves in that thought process.
And that's what gets us so confused, because, that's the reason why we chase the relationship. And we really do. I mean, so many of us, I think every single person has always chased at least one person, whether it's romantic, friends, and some of us are they do it more often than not, because, we're, instead of trying to look at ourselves and say, hey, we chase our insecurities. Well, I was told that as a female, I need a man. I was told as a female that I should be married and have kids and have the white picket fence, the perfect American. And as a guy, you're told, you got to go out, get a job by 20 years old and do this and go to college and support this family. And how do we have time to find ourselves when that's something that we're told and conditioned to do?
I think that right there is, if everyone could find the answer to that question, then the world would be a perfect place. Because like I said, we're so trained to, even when we train ourselves, that if we go out and do these things, and if we take this job, or, start this business, or get in this relationship, or whatever it is, we're somehow going to find ourselves in the midst of it. And although, might partially get us there, at the end of the day, we need to take that extra time for ourselves, journaling, meditation, video journaling for yourself type of stuff.
Well, that takes us to a point. We can journal all we want, and but if we're not seeing the truth, then we're going to write lies in a journal. And that can be tricky, because a lot of us, some of us can write the truth out, and we'll write our really feeling. I even go back on my journals. I have so many journals, and I go back in my journals and I laugh, because at the time I thought I was so smart and so intuitive on certain things. And as you grow and as you mature and as you gain more experience, you kind of look back and say, yeah, you didn't know as much as you think, And journaling is a great tool. It really is. And I advise you to do that. I really do. I think journaling, video journaling, as you mentioned, is a great thing, if you don't mind putting yourself out there. Some people even do it on YouTube and everything. But that journal, if we're going to get to a point where we're able to look past it, then we're going to have to be able to figure out where we're going to go down. And when we come back from this break, this is where we're going to go.
A message from the life of Raina. We live in a world faced with many tough challenges. Our lives become chaotic and filled with disaster ever so quickly, most of the time before we even realize. Our issues beat down our mental mindset, and an imbalance of emotions become prevalent. The life of Raina is dedicated to helping people on the deepest spiritual level. Miss Raina the creator of Transcendental Development and Growth, works on your core issues and finds the solutions which allow you to break free from the emotional bondages of life, helping you achieve the life you've always wanted to live. Isn't it time that you lived life for you? Call the Life of Raina, 561-846-2190, and schedule your appointment today. That's 561-846-2190. Or email thelifeofraina@icloud.com.
All right, everybody, we're back. You're listening to Miss Raina on Transcendental Transformation. You can always hit us up on Spreaker.com/user/Transcendental Transformation. You can find us on Facebook and all that good stuff, but we'll get to that later. So with me tonight, as if you've already known, we have my protege Caleb, and what we're discussing is kind of like what we're going through as far as, when we begin our journey to find self, and it doesn't matter how old you are. It's never too late to start the journey to self-discovery. And in order for us to have those healthy relationships with, our family members or our exes or, our parents or whoever, we're struggling with, we're going to have to learn to develop that sense of self. And so the reason why I asked Caleb, as we stated before, was because I want to kind of go through a little bit of the scenarios that we have been going over with the last 2 years. And so with that being said, Caleb, we talked about responsibility, and the one thing that I think, and then we talked about also thinking. The one thing that I want to talk about next is, is our emotions, because a lot of this show, a lot of times we talk about our emotions. We talk about, how our emotions can be so destructive and how they can get in the way of seeing the truth of the ideas and change our perception of what's going on. So as an emotional person, when you first came in and started working on yourself, obviously, like, you had a lot of challenges and stuff, but what was the emotion that was driving you in the beginning?
Well, I see it now, and I guess it could be debatable if it's considered an emotion, but I beat myself up for about everything. I beat myself up for what I was going through, and I felt like I was not doing enough, and it made me feel like I wasn't enough, and I felt like I was in a rush, and I felt like I had to do this. I had to go, take this sales job. I had to go write more books. I had to go hop in this relationship and all these things, and I was in a rush to, I guess you could say, grow up.
Okay, so beating ourselves up. If since you've been so much into this now, beating ourselves up, what does that entail? What emotion is driving that?
The emotion, I didn't want to be a disappointment, and I felt like I wasn't doing enough, and it made me feel angry, but it also made me feel sad, and the combination of two. Later on, I found that out, and I felt angry at myself for not doing enough, because in my mind, if I did this certain thing, then it was going to mean something about myself.
Okay, so we have this idea that, okay, well, I don't want to be a disappointment to my dad, my parents, or my siblings, or this idea of society, and I got to beat myself up because I'm not doing enough. If I got to go out there and get the job, I got to rush, even though I'm only 20 years old. I got to get the job. I got to get the girlfriend. I got to, make $1 million, and all that brings me satisfaction. All that will take care of my sadness, my anger, my grief. And it sounds familiar, doesn't it? Because we're all chasing these ideas. And, and this idea of, and all of us beat ourselves up because we all have that thing called guilt. And the guilt stems from insecurities, from our conditioning through society, saying that if you don't do this by a certain time, then you're not adequate enough. And let me tell you something. First of all, yes, you are adequate enough. You are very adequate. You are more than adequate enough, and you need to understand that. You need to start looking at yourself in a different light, and that comes with time. You're not just going to look in the mirror and say, oh, I love you 100 times, and all of a sudden, poof, magic wand waved, and all of a sudden I love myself. It doesn't work like that, folks. It really doesn't. I wish it did. I wish it really worked that easily, but it just doesn't. It takes work. And so, okay, so Caleb, you're beating yourself up, you're finding your disappointment, and how did you get out of that? Or how did you start to understand that this was a problem?
Well, honestly I didn't for a while, and it's actually, I felt like I've kind of gotten over this hump, if you want to call it that, in the last few months, more in my perception, more than I have over the last few years. And it was the aspect of, one, taking responsibility for how I felt, but realizing that was coming from something, and I realized that a lot of that was coming from things that I didn't want to deal with. And one of the main things was the death of my dad. And even when I was going through all those things, I wanted to almost use his story and what happened as almost like a way to push me forward in my life, if you want to call it that. And I realized that once I started facing it and what I was going through, I kind of like almost lost the need to go after at least a portion of those things, the job, the money, the relationships, and part of it at least.
Well, oh my God. So what you're saying is if I work on myself, that I'm going to lose the ambition to go out and do stuff and be successful?
I have this newfound motivation and drive. I mean, I don't feel down in the dumps like I did before. On a flip note, I have no idea what I want to do, but I mean, it's like I feel. I mean, I definitely know I have a lot more to work through, but I feel like I've freed myself up from something that was holding me down, and I feel lighter, and I can go after what I end up going after that much harder, if you want to call it that.
No, I get that, because the motivation, you said something, and I'm glad you said it, because you said I have a newfound motivation, and that's the key. Because after 2 years plus of working on himself, even though he still doesn't know what he wants to do, he said, I feel lighter, I feel less stressed, I'm doing, things are coming more clear. And the idea, well, I didn't realize I got over this hump. I realized that I didn't want to deal with it. Oh, what didn't we want to deal? Things are falling on my desk over there. But I didn't want to deal with it. And some of the things that haunt us are the painful memories. I was raised very. I had a lot of violence in my life. Okay, and there was a lot of happy stuff too. But I mean, we don't want to deal with that. We want to push it away. And something as strong as someone passing, especially our parents, that can be very painful for us, especially as a child that we don't understand. And so our fear that I'm not going to have enough time. In this situation, a death can, or as we call it here on this show, transition. A transition can scare us into thinking, oh my God, my time is so limited. I got to go. And what did he say? I got to go out and get that job and do this so quickly because, hey, I only got a short amount of time. So, what is it right now, since we're talking about right now? You said, well, I really don't know what I want to do, but I'm kind of just juggling different ideas. So what is actually going through your mind at this moment?
To add to what you were saying, absolutely, I wanted to go out and do those things, but I also, because I had this idea in my head that if I did those things that, my dad would be looking down on me and he'd be proud of me. So I wanted to add that. But then to answer your question, what's going through my mind now is, it's like, I kind of feel like I want to seclude myself from everything just to kind of figure it out, because I realize how much everything around us, including, advertisements, our jobs, our bosses, our friends, our family, everything is down our throat all the time if we let it, but it's, it's still there. And it's, if you let it, it will influence your every decision. And that's the thing is okay, do I just, seclude myself from everything, or do I figure out how to not let any of it affect me, or both?
Well, for a lot of people who hate to be alone or have to have people around, you're talking about seclusion. You're talking about, oh my God, I want my own personal time. And I know a lot of people in relationships will say, oh no, I love my personal time. But do you really? If that relationship didn't exist and you were single or by yourself or alone, as you like to call it, for a long period of time, would it eat at you? Would it get at you? Would it do that? And, but it's a different mindset. mindset. And I want you guys to understand the difference of what he's talking about compared to maybe where some of your minds are. Well, I don't like to be alone, and the fear of being by myself is just frightening to me, because the seclusion is a way to reflect. It's a way to quiet the mind. It's a way to take a break from everything. And that's why, like, so many of you who, work 20 hours a week, 20 hours a day, have relationships, friends always coming and going, you want that private time. But at the same time, it also feeds you. It also feeds those insecurities because, hey, look, my life is rich. I have friends, family, all this other stuff. So that means I'm important. But, that doesn't always mean what it means. And, and he said something that, kind of caught my eye. He's like, well, I did all this stuff because I wanted my dad to be proud of me. And pride is really an insecurity. And the reason why it's an insecurity is because we think about what pride does for us. If we have pride, and why do we have pride? Well, I'm too proud to do this. I'm too proud to ask for help. I'm too proud. I want to go out and do this so that I have pride and it's chasing. It's chasing your insecurity. You could call it, you can call it drive. You can call it pride. You can call it all these different things. But the fact of the matter remains that it's still chasing an insecurity. And so when we go back and we talk about, and Caleb said he was angry, he was sad, and let me tell you something, as his mentor for 2 years, there has been many times where his emotions have made him crumble, and a lot of times have blocked him from seeing this. I mean, the things he's telling you right now literally have taken over 2 years for him to do it, and sometimes
well over 2 years.
What?
Well over 2 years.
Yeah, well over 2 years. And some of them, I just wanted to give him a little smack over there because it was right in front of his face. But we don't understand it until we go through it. And you have to start looking at yourself. You have to start going to, and saying, hey, you know what? I may have a relationship. I may not. I may have family. I may not. I may have friends and that. But none of it is going to bring us. If we still just, life should be to the point where, we have instant gratification for ourselves, not by what we have, not by who we're around, and that should enrich it, but it should be instant gratification. Hey, I'm going through a lot of struggles right now, and a lot of people who have just met me within the last couple months you probably think I'm a terror. My friends have seen me go up and down and everything, but each and every day, even as bad as it gets, I still have instant gratification for myself and my life, and as horrible as it gets, even as dark as sometimes it's gone. And that's what's pulled me through, because it didn't rely on what I had. It relied on this relationship with myself. And because of that, I don't need all the external factors around me. Hey, it's great when I do. I love my friends. I love the people around me and that. But if it all went away tomorrow, I still have myself. So, our emotions, and you're an emotional person, Caleb, and that the emotion of, let's say, like, do you mind if we talk about your last relationship?
To an extent.
Okay. So can you give us can you fill us in a little bit, as much as you want, about what happened? Because I want to use this as them to see about building a relationship with ourselves.
So there was someone that I met, it was really great, really fast, and, everything was going really well, and, we were in love and all these different things, and then, I knew that we both had our own insecurities, and did completely different ways, and probably similar in certain ways, and I knew that one day that was going to clash, but I didn't know it was going to clash in the way that it was, and one day I decided to open up, because we had always been straightforward with each other. One day I decided to open up about how I felt, and, how I felt like, for example, how I hadn't dealt with my dad, and, all these different things that were coming up. And I felt like that, maybe part of it was, I'm, almost like using this relationship in a way to not want to completely deal with my problems. But then I followed it up with, doesn't change how I feel about you. I'm just letting you know. And, of course, person who, including myself, and I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say it was just her, but a person who doesn't understand themselves completely can immediately take that as some form of rejection. And so that's what happened, and it completely crushed me because, I wanted to keep putting in, and I was there. I'm like, I'm there through thick and thin and all these different things. And then, once I realized what I had said, I realized I was like, okay, well, I could sit here and blame her, but I decided to face exactly what I said. I said, I'm not facing these things, and that's why I said it. So I started to face those things, and it's almost like the need, or I gotta say, some of it's still probably still there, but it's mostly
well, let me introduce, because I know we're not going to tell them exactly what you said and stuff like that, but I mean, obviously, and this is the problem we have, and this is a surefire sign that you're chasing your insecurities. Anything when any relationship, friends, family, especially romantic or friends, when it goes off, and I always say, when it goes as up in the air as fast as a bottle rocket and comes straight, it's going to come straight back down. And I told Caleb this over and over. And this is part of life. This is what we have to learn. These are the signs that we have to look for. It's great. It's hot, heavy. It's all good. We're all, meshing. Everything just seems, we're besties. We're twinsies. We're doing all these things. And Caleb even made a comment that, oh, this person's exactly like me. And it was hook, line, and sinker. And that's because we don't realize that our emotional insecurities and our emotional inadequacies, as we think of them, are feeding this. And our subconscious, our ego, our victim side is like, oh, I need this relationship. I need this in order to feel good about myself. I need this in order to feel happy about myself. And finally, what I'm proud of him is that even though, what he said to her kind of, and I don't want to say destroyed the relationship, because it was coming down already before that, but it was truthful. And this is what I'm saying is when we're healing, when we're realizing, when the smoke is clearing and all of a sudden, maybe what I'm in, maybe the relationship or the friendships that I am aren't as healthy for me as I thought they were. And then we open ourselves. We sometimes go back to, because remember the first thing he says, I used to beat myself up. He went back to that because, I said this and I hurt her. And because both of them were playing the victim in the relationship so hard, that's the card that she pulled. And so his reaction was to go back to that. Oh, well, I did it, blah, blah. And even though we were sitting there saying, hey, I'm going to take responsibility, it was hard because watching the transition and him having to it was a rude awakening and it was a hard awakening, but these are some of the things that we have to go into in order to find self. So now it's how many months later is it?
I think it's been 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
I think so.
So now looking at this, now all of a sudden understanding, hey, I jumped into a relationship that wasn't healthy for me, and because I was chasing this, what do you see now? If you ran into someone similar to this situation, what would you see right now?
Well, I would definitely look out for so-called red flags, as you call them, but I realize that it's the taking responsibility aspect of, because of the things internally that I hadn't dealt with and I still haven't completely dealt with, I attracted those people that basically fit. It's like a puzzle piece, it's like you're the puzzle piece and then you're looking for something to fill that same exact thing that you're looking for, and it can even be subconscious. So I realize that there's still part of me that wants to be loved for many different reasons. And I think if something did come back in, I'm not going to lie, I'd probably be tempted. But I think I've seen too much and realized too much that it's like I couldn't just jump in blindly like I did.
Okay, so let's be truthful with our listeners, because on this show we're always truthful. How bad was this? Was this very painful for you, this breakup?
Yeah, it was really painful. It was, and I don't think it was like the relationship per se that was painful, but because, like I said, for the last few years, and as you can even vouch for this, that I've been running from all these different aspects of my life. My dad, lots of other things that were going on. I've been running from them, and then once that crumbled, it kind of like it brought everything to the surface, and then I was just like, okay, this really hurts. So do I just want to repeat my same pattern of going to chase something and not dealing with it, or do I just want to, freaking hurt for a really long time, however long it's going to be? And I heard something, I can't remember where I heard it from, but I probably heard it from you, and it was this aspect of, sitting in a room by yourself doing nothing, aka meditation, but just and seeing what comes up and just observing what comes up, and that it's stuff still comes up. I still do that.
All right. So. Well, we're gonna take a break right now, and right after that break, we are going to talk about patterns and observation, because I'm glad he brought it up. We'll be right back after these messages from the Life of Raina.
A message from the Life of Raina. We live in a world faced with many tough challenges. Our lives become chaotic and filled with disaster ever so quickly, most of the time before we even realize. Our issues beat down our mental mindset, and an imbalance of emotions become prevalent. The Life of Raina is dedicated to helping people on the deepest spiritual level. Miss Raina, the creator of Transcendental Development and Growth, works on your core issues and finds the solutions which allow you to break free from the emotional bondages of life, helping you achieve the life you've always wanted to live. Isn't it time that you lived life for you? Call the Life of Raina, 561-846-2190, and schedule your appointment today. That's 561-846-2190. Or email thelifeofraina@icloud.com.
All right, we are back, and just before we took a break, we were talking about, relationships, and Caleb was being awesome by sharing one of his very personal relationship stories with us. And it takes a lot of strength to, especially go on the radio and YouTube and Skype and all these other places and stuff, and be honest with ourselves and share our personal experiences. And a lot of times we fear that because we're going to be judged for, looking like we're weak or vulnerable, or we did something stupid, as some of us would say. But it's not about that. You have to remember that building a relationship with self really depends on how far you're willing to take it. Are you willing to put in the effort and surrender these ideas of ego and vulnerability and all this other stuff? Because in fact, and Caleb has learned this too, in fact, when we start sharing our experiences and being open with it, it actually teaches people power. It actually teaches people strength, and they realize, hey, I did that too, or I did something similar, and it's okay to be like that, because shame is one of our number one killers, and shame, it doesn't really exist. It only exists in our mind, and this concept of this idea that, there's a good and bad and right or wrong, and we know that Miss Raina doesn't believe in any of that stuff, so it's nonsense over here. But we were talking about patterns, and oh my God, do patterns kill us? Patterns. Oh, we are so conditioned to patterns. It's not even funny. In fact, and I know a lot of people hate when I say this, but everything we believe is a pattern or a conditioning. Everything we do, everything we react to is a pattern or conditioning. And so that is why we are a slave to our mind. That is why we are a slave to these toxic relationships or bad habits in our lives, or whatever we say. We are a slave to it because we're in a pattern. How many of us have done that relationship over and over, that just kind of, we always date the same guy or girl that just seems to be that person that just always seems to burn us, or we constantly do the same things, with our family. We always get into that same fight, that same pattern always comes up, and we try to avoid people because we know that if we see this person, this subject's going to be brought up, or somehow we're going to get, and it's always patterns. And how can we build a relationship with ourselves, or have a healthy relationship with anyone else, if we're stuck in these patterns? And Caleb actually said the answer: observation. Observation is the key. We are not an aware society. You may think you're aware, but spend a week with me and I guarantee you, you will find out that you're not an aware person. Why? Because we're in patterns. If we can't sit there and say instantly, oh wait, I'm doing it. Wait, here it goes again. I feel the emotion coming up. I really want to do this. If we don't have that awareness, if we see the steak and just bite at it right away, And yeah, we're not that aware. And I know that hurts, but that's part of taking responsibility. And Caleb, my little protege here, we had one of those that's something that we dealt with was patterns. And I gotta tell you, me and him have even butt heads over this a lot of times, because I would say, Caleb, you're doing that pattern again. You're doing that pattern again. Well, I don't see it. What do you mean? I don't get it. And it would get to the point, and to the point where I had to stop coaching him on certain patterns so that he would bump into that road enough time to finally be like, oh, I see it. So, our observations, I know you've struggled with observation and everything like that, Caleb, and that what is, like, when you look at observation, when I first explained to you what observation was, have you found that there was a difference between what you thought it was back when we first started and what it is now?
Yeah, I definitely do feel like there is a difference. I think originally I thought it was, well, if I think hard enough about it, then I'll notice it. But that's a pattern in itself, is thinking about it. And now I'm seeing that it's slowing yourself down enough, consistently throughout your different areas of your life, and, taking note of what's going on here and there. And, I actually, I thought of a question that would be, that the viewers might, might like. It's like, where do you think that it comes to the point of, like, where's the line of awareness and versus having those patterns? Like, I'm trying to think of the way that exactly asks the question, but we have something that happens to us over and over and over and over again. Well, where do you think we can start being aware of it? Do you think it's later on, or do you think it's at the beginning, or what determines that? I mean, it's, well, because you stopped coaching me, and then I saw it eventually.
Well, I didn't stop coaching him. I want to make it clear, we didn't ever stop coaching. It was just that in my teachings, a lot of times when a student of mine, or in this case my protege, doesn't understand the teachings, I allow them to fall on their face in life, and pretty hard, so that they understand it. And sometimes it takes rough, hard experiences. Like, I saw this whole thing with his ex-girlfriend coming, and the moment he's like, hey, this, I knew exactly what was going to happen from start to one, and I had to let him do it, because we were working on self. We were working on this awareness. And yes, our brain only works in patterns. Everything we do, eventually, our muscles have memory, our brain, our neuron, everything goes in patterns. And so we always are going to have patterns. But what kind of patterns do you have? We may choose the word habits for patterns. We may say, oh, let's have a healthy habit lifestyle, or let's choose healthy patterns. But it's not really healthy or unhealthy. It's just what is going to bring us towards our goals. And so our pattern of destruction, is a lot of us like to go, whether it's food or maybe abuse or whatever it is. And so it gets to a point where, yes, you have to become aware of those patterns. And so his question was, well, where do we start? Well, you can't start with awareness, because it's patterns. When we're children, we are taught patterns. We are taught conditioning. We are taught those ideas. And in order for us to function, we copy what we see. Children copy what we see. So if a parent swears a lot, guess what? The child usually, if they smoke, more than likely the child's going to. It happens because our brain picks these things up and say, oh, this is basic human activity. Just like a dog, like, what is Nira looks at me with her head cocked all the time, like, oh, I see that. And now she knows, like, oh, if I start grabbing for my keys, she runs into her cage, because I used to lock her in the cage for the first year and a half. And she understands that these are patterns. Her brain is trained by observation. So our observation has to become not by patterns, not what we're seeing, but by awareness of who we are. And that's a huge difference. If we're having an awareness of who we are, it has nothing to do with the external world. Nothing at all. It has to do with how we feel inside and what brings me closer to my goals. So me and Caleb have two different awarenesses, but we have also an awareness outside. So the awareness that I'm talking about with our patterns or on healthy habits or whatever we want to call them, and that's the awareness of what I'm doing. So he said, oh, well, I had this pattern of finding these girls going really fast, it takes off, skyrocketing, and then it blows up in my face and I come crashing down and burning. That's a pattern because we may have witnessed that in our lives someplace, or we may have become accustomed to that in some form. So we have to go back and become aware of where it happened to us in our lives. And yes, it always starts to the beginning. So I had to become aware of certain things. And when I become aware and I'm like, okay, I see this pattern, but where is the root of this pattern? Where did it start? And we may not know where it starts, but we start where our memory first recollects. If we have no recollection of something, hey, when I came up with when I was diagnosed with DID, I took a trip into Chicago. Why did I take a trip into Chicago? Because my brain couldn't remember certain things, and I couldn't remember, and I started seeing certain patterns, and I started remembering what people said. So what I did was I went back home and I asked people, what was my childhood like? What happened? What did this? What did this? And slowly, as things started to happen, it pieced itself together. So when we're talking about being aware in our patterns, that's where we have to start with, is the first and frontmost of whatever is in our face the most. And that's what I always say to Caleb. Whatever is in your face the most, whatever is constantly jabbing that knife into your side, that's where we start with the observation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to go back to what we were saying earlier, as it all goes into a circle, my pattern of wanting to go do something because I'm, I feel like I'm like not enough, or I'm a disappointment, and I'm like, part of me really wants to just, okay, slow down, seclude myself like we were talking about before, but because it's been my pattern since how long, who knows how long, I mean, it's been for a while, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should go start this, go start that, go start this, and it honestly, it sucks to try and stop yourself from that pattern.
It does, because it's a drive. You have to realize that it's a drive. Our body sends messengers, chemical messengers, to react to, and for us to understand it, because that's what it knows. That's all it knows. It's like a trained dog. We laugh and we think that animals are stupid because they don't have the consciousness, but we can train them to do whatever we want. Well, guess what, people? You are just as trained as the dog. You are trained by government, by society, by religion, by politics, everything. Well, I grew up in a Republican house, and guess what? I started to become Republican, and I got away from that. I grew up in a Catholic house, and what did I start to become at first? Catholic, and I had to step away from that because we are conditioned, our patterns are developed by what we see and hear the most. And what the great thing about this, and the great thing about what Caleb's going through, is you're an adult now. You don't have to be subjected to those patterns or those conditionings or all this chaos anymore. If you're angry and sad, that's because you're being driven by that chaos. You're being driven by those patterns. If you want to do something like, hey, this lawsuit's done now, and hey, great, there's things that I want to start getting, now that I can start getting healthy, I want to go back to physical therapy and do all these different things, and I'm going to, because I have to redo those patterns. Is it going to be easy? No. Even on a physical level. And there are patterns of physical, there are patterns of emotional, there are patterns of mental, and there are patterns of spiritual. And I don't care what religion, what spirituality, what politics, whatever you like, you are all subject to it. Because we live in this society. And so we're going to close up here in a few minutes because we got about 7 minutes left. But you went from this emotional kid, and still, we still got a long. Remember, people, this is still a journey. You're not going to get over it within a couple years. But you went from this emotional young kid who was hungry for a while, but then all of a sudden you kind of pushed back. And remember, we've talked about this recently. I said, you seemed more hungry for certain ideas about yourself before, when you were 19, than you are when you're 22.
Okay. Is there a question to that?
There is a question to that.
Okay.
The question is like, what changed in that aspect of saying, hey, what, before I wanted it, I had to be up Miss Raina's butt 24/7. Now all of a sudden we fell off the face of the earth at certain times.
Because you were this spiritual guru in my mind, and I wanted to be that because I wanted to identify with something that I thought was going to make me who I am, and it's like it's there's still a drive, but it's not anything like it was. It's different completely. It's a want, not a need anymore.
Absolutely. And so what's the difference between a want and a need?
A need, you're trying to fill something within yourself, versus a want is you're following your heart.
Absolutely. And you know how long that took him to understand that? I don't know how many days, how many nights and days we spent trying to understand that. And we hear that. And you don't understand how many times I've explained that concept to him. Okay, as a want is, is you're chasing a need. A need is you're chasing something that, your desire. It's something that's a pattern that's being chased. And a want is something that you're trying to finally fill. And people don't, but we hear certain ideas, but we don't understand them, and that's why they're ineffective. And it took some painful experiences for him to go through in order for understand that. And like he said, he saw me as this one. Hey, I'm a person just like everybody else. It doesn't matter how old I am spiritually. It doesn't matter the knowledge. I am a person just like everybody else. I bleed. I cry. I get upset. Hey, all these things happen in my life too. But we have this idea of these things that we want because, hey, if I'm like Miss Raina, or if I'm like, Gary Vee, or if I'm like, whoever is out there, the best baseball player or football player, whatever, I'm somebody. Hey, I know people that are on the softball squads that identify that they're so great and wonderful because they can hit a ball over a fence. They're horrible people outside of softball, but hey, when they're on that field, they're so awesome because they can hit a ball over the fence. And they identify that because they're so lost in who they are that they feel that that's their only sense of gratification. That's their only sense of trying to get them, of trying to find themselves. And so the question is who am I? What's going to make me who I am? What's going to bring me closer to that? And you really have to get to know that. And you hear the old saying of, I have to ask myself, who am I? Who am I? Who am I all the time? Yes, that is true. But in every instance of every situation with a girlfriend, boyfriend, friend, family, whatever it is, and that you have to ask yourself, whenever there's an emotion attached, whenever there's chaos coming around, whenever there's an insecurity, who am I being pulled away from? Am I being pulled away from myself? Am I being taken away? Am I trying to please someone else? Am I trying to make my life satisfactory to appease others? And most of the time, you're going to find that everything you do is to appease somebody else. And we should never live a life like that. So, Caleb, last closing words. What do you have?
I know this is can be seen as really deep for some of you, but if you have to, what I did, I honestly, when I first started working with her, even though she helped me in a lot of areas, I listened to her shows over and over, and I always heard something new. Every time I listened to it, and even stuff that I listened to years ago, like I just listened to one of your shows recently, and I heard it completely differently. So, don't get overwhelmed with this because, I still sometimes do, but for a long time I would get overwhelmed with, all of this knowledge. You got to work on myself, blah, blah, blah. I got to do all these things. Again, trying to identify with what I thought I was going to be and just take it one day at a time.
All right. Well, thank you for the plug there, Caleb. But yes, absolutely. You are going to feel overwhelmed. You are. It's going to feel overwhelming. It's going to feel like sometimes you can't breathe. And that's why I always suggest working with someone that's very knowledgeable. There's a lot of coaches out there, but a lot of them, and I don't mean this to be rude, but a lot of them are only being taught or only teaching what they've been taught and can't think farther past than their own information. And thus, when you find a coach and you can only go so far, then you realize that they're being bound by their limitations. So a lot of times this work has to be self-worked for you too. So in that sense, yes, have some patience with yourself and try to have some understanding with ourselves, because if we don't have, compassion for ourselves and our struggles, then we're going to really have a hard time. All right, everybody, that is tonight's show. I want to thank Caleb so much for being here and being my little special guest. He's going to be popping on from time to time.
Well, thank you so much, Miss Raina. I look forward to the potential beingness on this show.
All right, thank you. And if you want to follow us, you can follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/Transcendental Transformation. Follow us on our YouTube at youtube.com/Transcendental Transformation. Visit us on our website, soulandspiritguide.com, to sign up for the newsletters to receive special VIP access to hidden shows and special guest offers when we have it. You can email me at transcendentaltransformations, that's plural with an S, at gmail.com. Remember to hit our new business up on Facebook, Serenity Naturals with a Z, and always remember to believe in yourself. And it's not our abilities or our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you and have a great day.